Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I am so glad you're here, and if this is your first time joining me, hi, I am Sandy Butchers, and this is the place where I try to explore art and digital art and creative processes and all the little stories that live behind the pieces that I create. But before we dive in today, just a quick reminder that if you enjoy these videos and you want to see more like them, it really helps when you like, subscribe, and maybe even share the channel with a friend or two. It's such a simple thing to do, but it really makes a huge difference in helping me keep creating this content. And of course, I can't forget to shout out my Patreon crew. Over there, you'll find extended process videos, behind the scenes looks, and 4 times per year, you even get exclusive merch mailed straight to your door as part of your subscription. It's a place where I get to share a little more than I can on YouTube, and it's also the best way to directly support my work if you'd like to. The link is down below in the description if you want to check it out. But for now, welcome back to another Butcher Shop. Right, so back in 2023, I believe it was, I started a series called The Age of Mice. And it was a series in which I tried to explore some of the most remarkable times in human history, but through the eyes of mice. It is part whimsical storytelling, part world-building exercise, really. And also for a part, it is a love letter to the strange and fascinating events that have really shaped our world. The piece I'm working on today is called The Alchemist's Aroma, though in all honesty, I've really been enjoying calling him the Alchemouse. He belongs to the time where the pursuit of knowledge and transformation and mystical science was flourishing. But rather than trying to create the ultimate golem, this little fellow is working to turn rocks into coffee. And yeah, let's see by the end of the video if he managed to get it done. When I first thought about this piece, I was inspired by one of my summer holidays from last year when we went to the Czech Republic, where they have this insanely cool Alchemist museum. And there was just so much to see there. And for some reason, my mind went back to that place. And I thought, all right, let's do this. Let's create the Alchemouse. But I wanted to really capture both that sense of mystery and wonder that I saw in that museum. So basically, that general awesome vibe of alchemy. So we're talking about the glow of flasks and the shine of metals and, you know, shimmering gold in firelight, and all that filtered through the perspective of a mouse who has decided to dedicate his life to science and the brewing of coffee. So again, it's part funny and whimsical storytelling, but it's also part remembering or maybe even honoring a time in our human history. There's just something about mice as characters that makes history feel more approachable and sometimes even more playful. They're so small and so vulnerable and innocent, and yet this series, they really stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the really big moments of human ambition, really. And I think that contrast between, you know, the fragility of a mouse and the significance they're trying to accomplish, I think that's what makes painting these little fellas so much fun. And speaking of significance, this particular piece was created with a bigger purpose in mind. It was part of a project for charity, which brings me to a topic I really want to start unpacking in this video. It is the difference between creating art for charity or creating art for someone who has asked you to work for free. let's talk about this for a minute, because this is a subject every artist bumps into sooner or later. I've decided to create a full video about artists working on commission and what to look out for, so that video will come up next week. Do hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on that. But in any case, there are some thoughts that I already really wanted to share with you. Because at some point in your creative journey, you'll get approached by someone, a brand or an organization, or sometimes even a friend, and they will ask you to do work for free. Sadly, this is not an exception. It'll happen to everyone, really, like everyone, every artist. So maybe they'll try to pitch it as, great exposure. Or maybe they'll frame it like it's a huge opportunity, you'd be silly to turn it down. And really, if you're just starting out, those pitches can feel really tempting. I mean, after all, exposure does sound nice, right? But here's the thing. Exposure won't pay your bills. It won't pay for your software subscriptions or your brushes or your tablet or your rent even. So when clients ask artists to work for free, what they're really saying is, we don't value your time and skill enough to actually pay for it. And that is never okay. Now, there are situations where you might consciously choose to work for less than your usual rate. Maybe it is for a friend you care about, and you're okay with giving them a discount. Or maybe it's a small passion project that you won't make much money, but you still want to be part of that. Those are conscious choices you make, with your eyes open and fully aware of the pros and cons that come along with the project. The difference, to me at least here, should always be that you're not being fish hooked into doing something you don't stand behind. So the short of what I'm trying to say is, doing work for free for a client who can pay and just doesn't want to undermines you, but also every artist out there. It feeds into a cycle where people start to believe that creative work isn't worth paying for. And we need to break that cycle, especially now that everybody and their mom claims they can make art, quote unquote, through the use of generative AI. But let's save that beast for another video, because oh boy, do I have an opinion about that. So yeah, back to the point. So what about charity work? Why is that different? When you create art for charity, yes, you're technically working for free, but the key difference is that it's a purpose-driven choice. You're not giving away your labor because someone undervalues you. You are donating it because you believe in the cause. You are using your art as a way to support something that is much bigger than yourself. The Alchemouse illustration was exactly that. I knew where the art was going, and I knew it would help, and I was happy to contribute. It didn't feel like, being taken advantage of, because I chose to do this. And that's the point I really want to underline. Even with charity, you need to make a conscious decision. Don't let guilt or pressure push you into it. Ask yourself rather, do I believe in this? And am I okay giving my time and energy here? If the answer is yes, fantastic, go for it. If the answer is no, it is also completely okay to say no. So at the end of the day, your art is your labor, and your labor has value. How you spend that should always be your choice. But yeah, like I said, I want to break down a couple of money things really in my next video. So stay tuned for that bit. let's shift gears a little bit. I know I have quite a couple of subjects waiting for this video, and it might be a little bit of a mishmash at this point, but yeah, I do want to talk about the technical side of this piece, and specifically the lightning. Alchemy, in my mind, is all about illumination, both literal and metaphorical. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted strong, dramatic light in this illustration. The glow of candles and some god rays, and the shimmer of liquids and glass, and the way dust hangs in a shaft of sunlight. All those elements help tell the story. So for this piece, that's what I really leaned into. One of my favorite techniques to create atmosphere in a piece like this is by using god rays. They're such a simple thing to add, but they do so much heavy lifting in terms of mood. So the trick really is subtlety. And I've talked about subtlety before, which is funny in a way because people who know me personally, they might know that I am a lot of things, but not necessarily very subtle. However, in my art, that subtlety, I guess, I kind of compensate for that through my art. Let's keep it at that. But yeah, so I look for a main light source. So in this case, there's this window spilling light into the workshop. And I have created these light beams really just by painting these wide strokes very roughly in the direction that I want them to come in with. And after that, and I think that's the real trick here, is you give them two different types of blurs. First off, you give them a directional blur that is 100% parallel with the direction that the light is flowing in. And then afterwards, once you've done that, you give it a very solid Gaussian blur. And those two blurs combined together will really create that state of God ray. And if you add a layer effect to that, so I personally very often use either color dodge or oh man, this is interesting because my Photoshop is set up in Dutch. Stick to color dodge, or if it's a shadow part, you might even give it a linear burn. But mess around with the layer effects to see what works for you, because there is no given formula that works for everybody. But yeah, so two types of blurs and a layer effect. It's all you need to get God rays done, really. And what makes them believable is how they interact with the objects in the scene. Because these rays should pass behind some objects and in front of others. And maybe they're broken up by shells or softened by fabric, or, those interruptions keep them from looking like flat stripes across your canvas. So as you saw me doing earlier, in this case, the beams are interrupted by the two jars in the windowsill. And it's just that playfulness and that contrast between that light and that very slight shadow mixing in between that. That's how you bring your God rays to life. So I do invite you mess around with that for a bit and let me know in the comments if this technique with the double blur and the layer effect worked for you as well. speaking of atmosphere, let's talk about texture for a minute. And by that specifically, I mean talking about the blender brush. Some of you who have been around my channel a bit longer have truly seen my development as an artist from blending everything to crap to the point where I'm at right now, where I hardly ever still pick up that blender. Yeah, when I first started digital painting, I used to blend everything. I wanted my transitions to be silky smooth, and every gradient needed to be perfect. Every shadow needed to dissolve into the next, etc., etc. And for a while, I really loved that look. It gave my art a kind of a polished, almost airbrushed sort of feel to it. I remember when I was in grade 12, my teacher explained to me the word sfumato, which was a technique that a lot of Renaissance painters used. And I remember really loving that word and loving that style, and everything needed to be smooth. And I think for a long time after, because it's been eons ago since I was in grade 12, but that stuck with me for a long time. But I think at this point my taste has really started to shift. A couple of days ago I realized that I actually prefer a little bit more grit, a little bit more texture, and a little more evidence of the brushstrokes themselves, especially because I mostly work digitally. So I wanted these illustrations to feel more real over time. And so with this current brush that I'm using, those imperfections kind of make my pieces feel more alive, or if anything, more tactile. These days, I use the blender brush much more sparingly. So instead of smoothing out everything, I use it to soften only transitions that really need it. So for example, in this case, the fur, where, for fur you kind of need this sort of natural softness. In most other areas though, like fabric or wood or stone or background elements, I lean into the texture of my brushes much more than I did like even 6 months ago. And it's funny how styles evolve like that, because what used to feel like the right way for me to do things, and I remember telling people in interviews, this is my style, I don't think it's ever going to change. Well, look at me now. This whole soft blend method, it just feels a bit sterile at this point. And you know what, this is part of being an artist. Like, you're always refining and you're always changing and you're always finding new ways to express yourself. And it's just kind of a moment of enlightenment for me, I guess, where, I took some time to look back at my stuff and see where I came from 6 months ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, and then really just understand that things are not the way they were, and that's good. So if you're someone who loves blending everything smooth, that's totally cool. But don't be afraid to experiment with leaving a few rougher strokes in place. Like, sometimes the texture you didn't plan for ends up being the most interesting part of the piece. So even if you feel like what you're doing is the one and only thing to do, try something else, because it really works. And that kind of brings us to the end of this time lapse and this little journey into the world of the Alchemouse. Today we really touched on quite a lot. So we talked about the whimsy of the Age of Mice series. We talked about the importance of valuing your art and making conscious choices about, charity work. We talked about magic, of lighting and god rays, and even the evolution of my relationship with the blender brush. I hope you found something in here that inspires you. So whether it's a new technique to try or a reminder to yourself to value your own work, or even if it's just a spark of joy from watching this tiny mouse take on a grand tradition of alchemy, please do give it a thumbs up or even subscribe to the channel. Maybe leave me a comment letting me know what you think of the Age of Mice series. Actually, tell me, do you have a favorite moment in history you'd love to see reimagined through the eyes of a mouse? I'm always curious about new ideas, so let's hear it. And as always, if you like more behind the scenes content and extended videos and even exclusive merch up to 4 times per year, go ahead and check out my Patreon. We are really trying to build a cool community. It currently contains about 24 people who are absolutely amazing and very talented as well, by the way. So please, you are very welcome to join this little group of people, and let's see if we can grow the platform a little bit. Thank you so much for watching in any case, and for being part of this journey with me. Until next time, keep creating, keep experimenting, and keep telling the stories only you can tell.